This overview video covers your recovery from surgery. And I think it's important when we talk about recovering from surgery that we recognize that this is a brief period of your postoperative life that is the result of the surgery that you've had and in no way represents the new normal. I think where this particularly comes into play is the fact that you have a very reduced oral intake. It's only 1 or 2 bites of food. Even sometimes a sip or 2 of a protein shake can be very uncomfortable and difficult, and you really have to pay attention and work to get this food down. And I can't tell you the number of patients that have kind of come into my office at the 1-week recovery stage and everything looks good, but they're clearly anxious and nervous. And I have to reassure them that what they're experiencing now is not your new normal. This is not how life is going to be. This is a brief period of recovery that's really dictated by your healing response to the surgery. And oftentimes during this phase, we have to focus more on what I call survival mode. Now, the truth is it's not really a survival mode. It's not a life or death scenario. I'd say 99 plus times out of 100. But it still means that we have to focus on getting you enough fluid and enough proteins and ultimately enough vitamins so that you can stay healthy and feel well. And oftentimes, in order to do this, we'll compromise a little bit on some of our dietary principles just to make sure that you're okay and feel well. Now, the hospital stay after surgery is getting shorter and shorter over time. And where I remember when I started that 3 or 4 days was routine and a week was certainly nothing that was abnormal. At this point, I can't remember the last time a patient stayed a week after surgery, and 3 or 4 days is almost unheard of. We're seeing these surgeries sometimes being performed as outpatients, and typically it's about 24 to 36 hours in the hospital for most patients. This is really the easiest part of the whole process, and one of the best things that you can do to speed up your recovery and to shorten your hospital stay and to get you back on your feet as quickly as possible is to walk. Another thing I think a lot of patients appropriately have apprehension about is this going to be a painful surgery? And the truth is, generally not. Generally, the significant amount of pain is around 6 hours after surgery, and then after that, it gets much easier, and patients are very comfortable. I have a lot of people who never use their narcotic postoperative pain pills and are really only in the hospital for about 24 hours out from surgery. Just to give you a sense of the fact that a lot of people don't really struggle with pain after the surgery. That's certainly not a common complaint that I see. And to be honest with you, when I see patients who really have a lot of pain, much more so than I would expect, I get a little worried that something else may be going on. So that's not something that really I think should be blown off. You should be pretty comfortable after this surgery. We're also going to focus on your postoperative diet, and this creates a lot of concern and anxiety for patients, and I think it should. It's clearly the most difficult part of recovery, and it takes the longest. You'll be feeling well way before you're able to eat comfortably and reliably and be able to sit down to a meal and know exactly how much and what types of food you can eat and what will feel comfortable and what may potentially cause a lot of discomfort. I think the most important advice I give to anybody in this postoperative period is that this is not a race. And by getting through all of the different stages of surgery faster doesn't mean in any way that you're doing better, going to lose more weight, or have a more a seamless recovery than someone who's moving much more slowly through these phases. And I really encourage patients to kind of circle their wagons in this time period rather than going out and exploring new foods. I have some patients who kind of come and say, well, on Tuesday I'm doing this, and on Wednesday I'm doing this, on Thursday we're going to try this. And that approach, I think, will ultimately lead to an unpleasant experience. Instead, I'd like you to say, well, Tuesday I tried this and it went really, really well, so I'm going to eat the same thing on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And that approach, where you just find those things that work and then just stick to them, you have incredibly little hunger during this phase. And if anything, it's a challenge to get enough in rather than to resist your desire to eat. And so because of that, it's easy to just find a food and stick to it. There's a lot of discussion about protein shakes, and I think many patients look at these as this great food that you should be drinking all the time and that are somehow going to drive weight loss. when that's really not the case over the long run. And we'll discuss this a lot more in subsequent videos. And there's a period of recovery, usually not in the first month or two, but more like 3, 6, or 9 months out from surgery, where I'll encourage patients to stop drinking these processed protein shakes and really stop focusing on a protein-first approach and instead focus on a veggie-first approach. And this is really where we cross the threshold from worrying about malnutrition to starting to worry about weight regain and long-term weight maintenance. Nonetheless, protein shakes in the first month or so can be very, very helpful. What I found, though, is that they're often poorly tolerated, and this can be very stressful for patients who wake up every morning saying, I have to drink 2 or 3 of these protein shakes, and oh, they make me feel so nauseous, and they're so gross, and it's just like I barely can get them down. And every day is just this struggle to drink these artificially flavored, artificially sweetened drinks that are just not working for their new taste buds. And because of that, I often suggest a more natural protein shake that you can make yourself. And by using only natural foods and getting rid of the artificial sweeteners and the artificial flavors, but still having a lot of protein, you can get through this phase much more comfortably. Another thing I really talk to patients about during this phase is mindful eating. Mindful eating is the approach where every bite of food you pay careful attention to, you enjoy it, you examine how it tastes, you examine how it makes you feel, you examine how it affects your satiety or fullness, and you don't make any decisions about your next bite of food until after you've fully absorbed and eaten and enjoyed this one bite of food. Now, this surgery really forces this approach on you. You have to be extremely careful in these first few weeks with every bite and take this really mindful approach to eating. And what I like to do is get people to carry that forward, because imagine if you're still doing that a year or 2 years or 5 years or 10 years out, how much that's going to allow you to enjoy food more and yet at the same time not overeat, not pick bad food choices, and learn to stop when you've had, not when you're stuffed, but when you've had enough. And so I think that this is something really important to practice during this phase of recovery, and something I work with my own individual patients on embracing and carrying out well past this recovery period. Another thing that causes a lot of anxiety and confusion is vitamins. Can I just go and get some over-the-counter vitamins like, say, Centrum? What's the difference between bariatric vitamins and Centrum? Bariatric vitamins are so much more expensive. Is it really worth it? They're just vitamins. Are they that important? Well, the answer is yes and no. There's a period of time where taking vitamins is absolutely critical. And for some patients, taking something like iron or vitamin D is really something you should be doing lifelong. But this is something we have to figure out over time. And in the initial phases, these bariatric vitamins are actually very important. So the bottom line is that the first month after surgery really requires a different focus than what we're going to employ over the long run. And a careful and deliberate approach to your post-operative diet, to a mindful eating strategy, and to your general recovery can make this month a relatively calm and peaceful and relaxing experience rather than one fraught with anxiety and discomfort.